Look, this might be the best video I've actually ever made for agency owners looking to scale because I've put hours and hours and hours of work into not just an agency training, but a guide and a step-by-step breakdown, like a little step-by-step breakdown, in depth, telling you and showing you every single step that you can actionably take to scale your agency. Okay? This isn't some BS breakdown that's kind of vague and still leaves you questioning what you need to do next. This shows you every single step of the way to scale your agency past 50K a month and above. Okay? Now, I'm only doing this for two reasons. One, I actually scaled my own agency to 50K a month and above. I worked with med spas. And the second reason is I'm here in New York because I just finished up a WOP event. And I met so many agency owners who are stuck between the 5 to 15K a month mark. And they're looking to scale, but they don't know how to. They're stuck, they're kind of like plateauing, and they're running out of time, right? But I decided to put this breakdown and step-by-step guide and basically entire video together simply because of those two reasons. Because I have the experience, and it just turns out that I met quite a few agency owners and they all have one issue. So if it's reaching you right now, and maybe I didn't meet you at the event, maybe you're just someone on the other side of the world watching this right now, I hope you find this truly valuable because I genuinely put a lot of hours and effort and everything that I know, like literally everything that I could think of from my mind that I used and that I learned when it came to scaling my own agency, I put into this. So I hope you enjoy this. It's super simple, but I will give you a full in-depth breakdown of every single step. Let's go.
All right, agency owner, lock in, okay? Lock in at least for the next 10, 15 minutes. That's all I ask of you. It might be a little bit longer, but regardless, you're going to get all the steps right now, okay? And yeah, fine, I'll flex. If you were going to ask for it, fine. Just from my experience, I scaled to 50K a month. It allowed me to scale my other businesses and get featured on Times Square. I traveled to Thailand, Spain, blah, blah, New York, Korea, Hong Kong, whatever, fine. Okay, now it's time to show you how to scale an agency. All right, I just had to do that just so you can trust me and see the credibility and authority, okay? But let's just jump right into scaling yours, okay? Now, there's 3 steps to scaling an agency and kind of 3 pillars that I view this by, right? You have marketing, sales, and fulfillment, right? Let's dial in on the marketing first because that's what's most important. Now, step 1 is going to be build your offer. You have to understand who your niche is and what you are selling to them, what the guarantee is, whether or not you even have a guarantee, what the deliverables are. This is step 1. You have to understand what specifically you are going to sell. Now, if you want guidance as to how to build your offer, I'm going to leave a link to one of my lead magnets. I'm not going to ask for your email. You don't have to opt into anything. At the description, in the description of this video, it goes into how to build a basically an offer, but you want to use this framework for building a good offer. You have to understand whether or not you want to include a guarantee. Who is your ICP? What specific pricing do you want to use? Do you want to use a large upfront fee? Do you want to do revenue share? Do you want to do commission? Do you want to do retainer? That's up to you. Do you want to do a combination? Totally up to you. Do you have specific pain points in mind around your ICP that's going to, play a role in what the structure of your offer will look like? How will that affect your offer in terms of your ICP's pain points? What niche do you want to target? Do you want to target med spas? Do you want to target HVAC companies? Do you want to target real estate? Like, there's so many different industries that you could target. So just choose which one resonates with you the most and which one you think you do a good job in. Then social proof. Do you have already any current case studies that you could leverage going into another industry? Simply because if you have a case study, that just equals cash, because with a case study, you can build up more trust. With more trust, you can close more deals, okay? So if you have a social proof around a specific industry, go into that one. That's my piece of advice. Then messaging, figure out your ICP's pain points. What is your ideal client profile avatar look like? What are their thoughts? What are the things that keep them up at night, right? Like, understand the psychology of your ICP so that you can literally tailor and craft the specific messaging that they want to hear and that resonates with them, which makes them interested in what you have to sell, okay? And then from there, we already went over guarantee, but that's basically the core components of crafting a good offer. Then step 2 is going to be select your acquisition channel. Now, you can choose YouTube, ads, Gmail, LinkedIn, Instagram, cold calling, all of these different sources of acquisition. In my agency, what we primarily did cold calls. Now, I created an entire separate video on this. If you guys go to my YouTube and search up how I scaled one of my partners to 50K a month, you can reach that exact video and you'll see exactly how we scaled the agency with just cold calls and did 50K in less than 30 days. And in the video, I literally broke down like the specific data points in that video that we hit to reach 50K a month, right? Just through cold calls and maybe a little bit of ads, but it was primarily cold calls. Cold calls brought in most of the traffic, and most of that traffic ended up basically contributing to most of that cash collected. And then basically the summary of that video was all you need is 4,900 dials, a 1 to 5% booking rate, a 30 to 40% show rate, and a close rate of 50 to 60%. Those were the specific metrics that we had in that specific month that led us to hitting and breaking the 50K a month barrier. Now, once you have selected an acquisition channel, spam the acquisition channel with high quality touch points. If you're going to do YouTube, make good videos. If you're going to run ads, you have to make pretty solid ads. If you're going to run emails, make good emails. Same thing for the rest of the acquisition channels. Since we were doing cold calls, we had to create a very high quality cold calling script that converts and resonates with the people and the med spas that we were selling to, okay? Now, this video goes over that specific script and gives you a general framework for what that script looked like and how you can personalize it to your own business if you are going to be doing cold calls as your main source of acquisition, okay? You can go to this video on my YouTube, the $2.5 million cold call script. I made that around a year ago, okay? Now, step 4 is reinvest your profits from the original acquisition channel you chose into multi-channel acquisition. Now, for agency owners, and in our own agency experience and what we did to scale our own agency, we went from cold calls into ads. And that's when we really leveled up and really reached true scale, okay? And that's what I'd recommend. So if you are doing cold calling and you close a client or a few clients from that, reinvest whatever those clients paid you into ads so that you can continue getting clients on a more predictable basis, because now you are switching from cold calls to ads. The one differentiator between those two is cold calls are outbound. So you're going to those people aren't going to you. And with ads, the client is coming to you. So you are positioned as the authority figure now. Now you just have to make sure that they show up on the sales call, which is a separate issue, but we'll get into that. So you want to make sure that you have ads and you reinvest profits into ads. But if you still want to go from cold calling to LinkedIn or from cold calling to email, that's totally your choice. This is just what we did. We went from cold calling to ads. Now, in terms of cold calling, this doesn't really apply as much, but what you want to do is you want to lower your cost of acquisition as much as possible. And this is most likely going to come at the point that you've already started running ads, because you're spending money to get clients now. And the more money you spend, right, the more clients you will get, right? So ideally what you want to do is you want to minimize the amount of spend that you have, at least in the beginning of scaling your agency, so that you can save as much money as possible, because cash flow is king when it comes to, having some bad months, having some, an emergency fund, if not for your agency or for your business, if something goes wrong, you want to make sure that you have cash saved up. So the most important thing that you want to do to make sure that happens is lower the cost of acquisition and stay as lean as possible. So, an example of that could be on ads. If your cost per lead is $40, you want to lower it to anywhere from $5 to $20. I have seen cost per lead go below $5. Don't get me wrong. But this is, a solid range that you want to aim for when it comes to cost per lead for your own business, all right? So B2B, cost per lead, $5 to $20. This is an ideal range. Obviously, if it goes a little bit above $20, you're still fine. But you want to obviously get it within this range or as close to this as much as possible. Now, if that makes sense, overall, just lower the cost of acquisition to stay lean, to keep money, to save costs, to maintain cash flow, right? So that you can reinvest into other things, or if something goes wrong, you have money to basically back yourself up, okay? Now, step 6 is hire VAs for outbound channels. Now, What we did was, once we mastered cold calling and once we had dialed in a script, once we had, understood that that script already gets us tons and tons and tons of appointments, right, every single day, that's when we, began outsourcing it. And it came around the time that we already started going into ads. So we had already turned on ads as an acquisition channel. So what we did was we decided, oh shit, okay, we're running ads, so it's time to delegate outbound. So that's exactly what we did. We hired VAs for outbound cold calling channels. And this is an example of our team. This is what we did. And we went through an insane amount of interviews to do so. I will tell you later in this video where you can hire VAs or CSMs or whoever it is from, okay, and what platforms are best for that. But so regardless, step 6, hire VAs for outbound channels around the time when you begin to go into ads, just so that you can delegate cold calling while you try and figure ads out. And then once you figure ads out, this brings me to step 7. You want to hire a media buyer for paid channels. So this is an example of me hiring someone that I knew who's on my team. His name is Brendan, and we hired a media buyer for our ads in terms of AI Clinics, our agency. Now, at this point in time, and I forgot to add this line, sorry about that. At this point in time, you want to make sure that you don't rush into hiring a media buyer straight away, simply because, again, you want to stay as lean as possible for as long as possible, because you want to retain as much cash flow and as much profit as you can. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't hire a media buyer for ads. I'm saying that you should wait for the right time, because rushing into it might not be the best decision, because you still might have time on your hands. The time that I'd recommend hiring a media buyer is when you're noticing that your time is being taken, significantly by a lot of the things within the agency, through managing people, through just scaling it in terms of that, and networking, referrals, building deals, building partnerships, maybe fulfillment, right? Like, you're noticing that a lot of your time is getting taken away from you, and that's exactly when you want to hire a media buyer for paid channels, okay? So this is exactly what I'd recommended. That's exactly what we did. So once we started noticing that our time was decreasing, right, we wanted to leverage our time so that we can actually work on the business, not in it. That's when we hired a media buyer to take over all of the ads. Then from there, what I'd recommend is learn email plus LinkedIn and expand your channels of acquisition. So it's kind of like baby steps, right? You start off with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and you build up the amount of acquisition channels that you have as you go. So for us, we went from cold calling to ads, and then from there, that's when we tried to figure out email, and then we ended up trying to figure out LinkedIn, and then we also went into YouTube as well. So we, at some point, had multiple channels of acquisition, and so I'd recommend diving into email and LinkedIn, depending on what niche you're in, right? Maybe depending on your niche, these platforms aren't the best, or maybe one of these isn't as good as the other, but regardless, the whole point here at step 8 is you want to begin to expand the amount of channels of acquisition that you have after you've hired a media buyer for paid ads. Because now, since you've kind of began or started the process of solving ads, and you've already solved cold calls or an outbound channel, now it's time to solve another one so that you can maximize the amount of prospects that come to you and your business, okay? Now, we're going to go into sales. That's it for marketing. Those are all the steps that we took to scale that on the agency end in terms of marketing. Now, for sales, number 1 is implement Go High Level and Zapier. These are the two, I'd say, motherships, the two softwares that allowed us to operate the agency and help us fulfill for clients. As well as create a bunch of stuff for marketing as well as sales. So make sure that you implement Go High Level and Zapier for the back end of your business. It'll structure everything for you. You can automate everything. You can create a booking system, and you'll obviously what I'm talking about in the next steps. So step one, implement Go High Level plus Zapier. It's a must need, okay? Step 2, like I said, create a booking system. You want to make sure that in the beginning or wherever you're at right now, you have a booking system in place through Go High Level, so that prospects, when they come to you, whether it's through cold calls or ads, you have somewhere where you could book them in or they could book in themselves, okay? So set up a booking system in Go High Level, or if you don't have Go High Level, use Calendly. Either one is a good option. So that you can start taking sales calls. Step 3, set up a funnel plus forms. So what you want to make sure that you have in terms of a sales process is You have a booking system, but now maybe it's time to start expanding into a funnel. Now, if you search up my website, this is one of the funnels that we have, at least from what you guys can see. This funnel is a little bit outdated. I'm working on another one. But regardless, what you want to do is set up a funnel so that people can basically kind of treat that as your website. And this is a like sort of like a centralized page where people can go watch a video of yours, watch a VSL, maybe see some visuals, and then apply to work with you, and then book in a call through your funnel. It's just kind of basically like a website, but it's not a website. Do you get what I mean? Right? So that's kind of what you want to build out. Funnels are just basically supposed to be super easy, low barrier to entry, sort of starting points so that people can book in a call with you while also consuming the most amount of information around your business. Okay. Step 4, set up nurture and reminder automation. So the most important thing that you want to do is whenever someone books in a call with you, and I made this mistake, right? In the very beginning of my agency, before I even tell you the importance of this, right? The one mistake that I made in the beginning of the agency before we hit 10K a month was I was doing cold calls, right? Because I started out doing cold calls for my agency. I was doing cold calls. I'd schedule an appointment. So I'd book it in like the day that I booked it in was like a Wednesday. I ended up booking the sales call for a Monday. There was no nurture automations in place. I was just like, oh my God, like this client, they're just going to show up. It's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be anything huge. And they obviously they didn't end up showing up that Monday. And I was like, wait, why wouldn't that happen? And then that's when I realized that, well, obviously they forgot. They don't care about the appointment. I don't mean anything to them, and they probably don't think I hold much value in terms of their business. So the most important thing that you want to do is as soon as someone books in with you, they are put into an automated nurture sequence where they can basically hold you at the top of their mind so that they remember that, oh shit, I have a sales call with this guy. He might have something pretty valuable to me. And if they position you like that, there's a solid chance that you actually might close that sales call. That brings me to step 5. Learn how to close at minimum 30% closing rate. 30% is a very solid rate. That's 1 in 3 prospects are around that area, and that's probably some of the best closing rate that I would say most agency owners can have. If you can go above 30%, like we did, we went up to 50 to 60% at some point, which was really, really good for us. But if you can be at 30%, that's still solid. You're still good. That means that you're still closing sales calls at a good ratio to the point where you're actually making good use of that time. Whereas if you're only closing 10% of the sales calls, you're kind of wasting money, and you're kind of letting a lot of money just slip through your hands. You get what I mean? So you want to make sure that you can learn how to close at a 30% minimum percentage. And if you have trouble with that, you can literally go to this YouTube video. It was one of the first ever YouTube videos I actually ever made. And actually, surprisingly, this was actually a solid one. I'm actually pretty happy with it. It shows you how to basically close using a sales framework and a sales script that I usually not use anymore, but used for my sales calls when I was running an agency. Feel free to take that in the description of this video. You can literally just search this up on my YouTube, how to make $134,456 in 6 months. Okay? Use that sales script, use that sales framework to learn how to close at minimum 30% percentage. Now, step 6, learn how to upsell. Yes, I'm flexing again. These are some screenshots of our Stripe payment processing and payments that went through to us, but they were strictly upsells. So the main thing you want to do is the reason why upsells are so valuable when it comes to running an agency is because that's just extra cash flow for you. And the reason why you want to get good at upselling is because you want to understand the perfect timing to upsell someone so that you can make more money. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you can learn how to upsell so that you can frame it in a way that is actually more helpful to the client, right? So one thing that we would do is as soon as we would close a client on maybe like a retainer, maybe like a one-time fee, we would only close them as a part of that fee on certain deliverables. And that means that certain deliverables that could be favorable to their business were also left out. And that's when we would take the opportunity on an onboarding call, an onboarding call to upsell them into other products and other features and other deliverables as a part of our service, right? And that's where we made a lot of back-end revenue as well from our clients. And that helped us increase client lifetime value and ultimately scale our agency to multiple six figures, right? So that is exactly what helped us scale our agency, just make more money, right? Because why not make more money from people who already trust you rather than strangers who you have to sell to again and go through this entire sales process of trying to, just go back and forth, maybe just on the call or whatever. It just like it's just sell to people who you've already sold to before, because it's just 10 times easier. Okay, so learn how to upsell and learn to create other offers that might be attractive to your ICP on the back end, and frame it in the right way, position it in the right way so that it's kind of helpful to their business. You're not just trying to sell them again, right? And you can actually make more back end revenue while also providing a win-win for your clients. Okay. Then step 7, learn how to train VAs and closers, because at some point, obviously, like I said, once you begin to master, a channel of acquisition like we did, we mastered cold calls. We wanted to outsource that straight away. And then at some point, we also hired closers because we didn't want to take as many sales calls anymore. And that's when we had real leverage, because that's when we had the most amount of time. So the most important thing that you still want to do is learn how to train VAs and closers, because one thing that I will say, hiring a sales manager for your agency, it's good, but it's expensive. And like I said, you want to stay as lean as possible. And for me, in my opinion, sales managers take more than media buyers or VAs simply because they spend the most amount of time in daily operations, doing the most amount of check-ins, texting back and forth with all of your VAs and sales reps and closers and whoever you have hired, right? They're spending a lot of time managing the operations on the sales end of your business. So they're going to take up a lot of money, and their asking price is probably going to be anywhere, minimum, if you want a good one, $2K a month. And that's if you're lucky. They're probably going to start asking anywhere from $3 to $5K a month, right? So you want to make sure that you can save as much of that money for, a solid period of time until you can afford it, and learn how to do it on your own. So this is just one of the calls where we were doing some training with RVAs, and closers. And so the most important thing you want to do there is just learn how to set up training automations, learn how to set up internal automations where, one thing that we would do is at the end of every single day to make sure that we, know how our setters and closers feel and how they're doing and the numbers that they're putting up every single day, we would send basically a Zapier automation to a Slack channel where a check-in form would come in, and that's where they could fill in, it asked them questions like, how are you feeling? How did you feel about the day? What was a win for the day? What was a loss for the day? What kind of numbers did you hit today? And so on. And that way, you can learn how to track those numbers. You can learn how your employees, VAs, and closers feel in terms of your business, in terms of selling. Because the most important thing in terms of sales management is you want to make sure that at the end of the day, because these are people, right? At the end of the day, you just want to make them happy. You want to make them incentive. You want to make them incentivized. You want to make them motivated. You want to make them, hungry. You want to make them hungry, and that obviously goes back to making the right hires and choosing the right people to be a part of your business. But once you've chosen them, you have to manage them. And if you don't manage them, they're not going to sell for you. Okay? And they're not going to put up the same numbers that they could in terms of highest earnings. So, like I said, learn how to train your VAs and closers, because that's going to be one of the highest leverageable points within your agency in terms of growing it. Because now it's about learning how to take the skills that you learned and pass it on to someone else. That's a whole nother video in itself, by the way. I actually have another YouTube video on that. If you go on my YouTube and search up how to create a 1% sales team, you can actually learn all of the steps from there. So if you want to do that, it's completely free on my YouTube channel. Feel free to steal all the tips and tricks from that video. But like I said, learn how to train your VAs and closers, and I will leave you with just one final thing on this step 7. In the beginning of my agency, when we had our first outbound cold caller dialer, and the first person that we outsourced to, she was a Filipino VA, right? She wasn't very good in the beginning, right? And this gives you some insight as to how we hired, but we hired for traits, right? For hunger, for someone that's going to do the work even when they don't feel like it, and really be an A player as a part of the team, right? She was not good at cold calling, but that didn't matter to us because we already had a script in place. that was like, as long as you read it word for word on the phone call, you will book the appointment because it's already been proven, okay? But she got better and better over time, but she still wasn't very good in the beginning. Then 6 to 9 months later, after consistent training with her, daily check-ins, weekly end-of-week reviews, right? Call reviews, call recordings, everything, right? She had become the best dialer I had ever worked with. And I tell this to everyone. As long as you can put in sufficient amount of training into your team and invest your time into them to perfect their skills, to perfect their craft, to perfect their sales, then you will create a 1% team of A players in terms of a sales team, appointment setters, closers, whoever you want, okay? That's it. That's it for step 7. I know I rambled a little bit there. Then you have step 8. Implement automated sales tracking system, because this is going to give you like insane amounts of leverage within your business, because now you at some point, since you have hires now, since you have a certain amount of appointments, since you have amount of calls being taken, since you close a certain amount every single month as a part of your agency, now you just have to track that. So the most important thing is setting up an automated sales tracking system that is that you can do through Go High Level and Zapier again, and just automate that and in Google Sheets. It's as simple as that, and you can track appointments being booked, leads, appointments, show rate, close rate, average cash collected, average appointments booked, average close rate, across all of your sales team. If you have a sales team, or if you don't, it's still useful to track your numbers by yourself, because now it's not guesswork anymore. It's data-driven sort of frameworks that allow you to take the next step in place, because a lot of people make the mistake without a sales tracking system where they think that, oh my gosh, I just didn't get enough leads this month, right? Whereas the actual issue is that they actually didn't close enough deals, which indicates that they actually suck at closing. It's not a leads issue. So that's exactly what you want to do in terms of implementing an automated sales tracking system, because now it's not guesswork. You know exactly what the bottleneck is, and then you can solve for that. So that's why automated sales tracking systems are amazing. Now, that was the final one for sales. Let's move on to the final one, fulfillment. Now, in terms of fulfillment, step 1, you want to set up client communications channels. One thing that we used at our agency was Slack. This allowed us to put a client basically into a Slack channel with us and our team, and then we maintained all of the communications through there. I would highly recommend, highly recommend, do not use WhatsApp with your clients, because at some point, if you give your clients your personal number, they are going to spam you. They're going to treat that as the main communications channel, whereas you need to set the expectation in the beginning, and I will go into expectations in a little bit, where you need to basically redirect them to a separate communications channel so that everything is there, okay? Because just having your phone blow up consistently, it's not great. So make sure that you set up Slack as your main client communications channel. Now, step 2. In the beginning of your agency, you want to make sure that you can learn how to run ads and perform the service that you're basically attaching to your offer. So if you're an ads agency, you want to learn how to run ads. If you're an SEO agency, you want to know how to do SEO. If you're an email agency, you get the point, right? So just make sure that you learn, and you properly learn. You know how to get results, good results, with ads or whatever your service is for the client that you are targeting. Because why go into business? Why start an agency if you're just going to get crappy results for your clients? For me personally, I wouldn't want to run an agency if I knew, ethically speaking, that I was going to get my clients crappy results. So make sure that you actually know what you're doing first in terms of your service, and then sell, okay? Then, step 3, understand your fulfillment cycle. This is going to be super important, because now you want to basically kind of in the beginning, or if you don't have this in place right now, this is important. You want to build out a client fulfillment roadmap, because you want to visualize the entire process of basically taking them from point A to point B. And having that as mapped out as possible is just super useful, because now you have a very consistent framework and structure within your business that every single client has to follow. So make sure that you understand your fulfillment cycle so that you can basically make your client feel good, because they feel like there's a lot of structure in place, and at the same time make yourself feel confident in your services and what you do, because now you have a plan that you can fall back on and that is dialed in, locked in, and gets your client a certain result. And now It's not guesswork about what you have to do every single week. If you have a structured plan, week after week after week after week, right, and your client contract is 4 months, right, you have those 4 months mapped out and you know exactly what happens every single week and where you should be at in terms of KPIs. Okay. Now, step 4 is setting up contracts and onboarding funnel. What I use personally, and I think this is an amazing hack, is a lot of people use like DocuSign, maybe Panda for their contracts, but what I do is I set up Go High Level funnel contracts. Now, the reason for this is because on my sales calls, it would just speed up the process significantly because it's already in Go High Level, and because the contract looked like something like this. I'm not going to zoom into it, so you know, obviously this is confidential information, but the contract basically went all the way down, and there was a signature section as a part of the funnel. It was like at the bottom right here. As soon as they would sign it, it would take them next to schedule an onboarding call. This just streamlined the onboarding process, or at least from like the sales call to onboarding process. Like it just streamlined it completely and saved everyone so much time, because now there was a contract funnel. As soon as they would sign this page, it would take them to this form, and then it would take them to this onboarding calendar so that they can schedule a call. And then from there, those things would trigger the next step, which I'm about to show you, right? Maybe in 2 steps, right? The next step that I briefly wanted to mention before I show you what comes next. Well, I was just going to mention that it's onboarding automations. The most important thing as part of step 4 is onboarding automations, but I'll show you that in another step. Another part is step 5. Learn how to set expectations with your clients. Oh my gosh, this is so important. This has probably cost me, at least 20 to 30% in churned clients, because we did not set the right expectations. Every single agency owner goes through it. It's not great, but you have to learn how to do it, because if you do not know how to set expectations and make sure that your clients, know exactly what they're getting and what they're getting in for and what they're signing up for, then you're going to have a high churn rate, because now your client is going to think that you're promising them the world when you're actually not, and when you're actually maybe getting them a lower result. So what I like to do in terms of framing expectations for clients is I like to obviously under-promise and over-deliver, but also what comes with that is just kind of being real with them and telling them that, listen, like I'm dedicated to you. I'm helping you build the solution that is your dream, right? I'm going to be part of your dream solution. Help me help you. So when, whether it's a done with you program or done for you program that you're selling to your clients, you have to make sure that regardless of every outcome, even specifically with done with you, if you're an agency owner, you know how there are so many clients that sign on to done with you but still expect done for you work. So I know exactly the pain that you're feeling. I went through that. And even specifically for done with you programs, setting expectations is super important. But even regardless, even if it's done for you, the client still has to do work on their end, right? Whether it's ads content, whether it's something else, there are still inputs on their end, on the client end, on the client's end that they have to fulfill. And it's just setting those expectations, setting KPIs that are manageable, fair for both sides, but at the same time still a win-win for you and the client, because it's doable on your end and it's doable for the client, okay? So setting expectations, if you can master this and learn how to communicate with your clients about this properly, you're sorted in terms of getting high quality clients and providing them really good results, because now there's a specific frame set in terms of your prospect's mind. Now your client understands exactly where you're going to come in, what you're going to do, and what they should expect from you. Okay. Now, step 6 is learn how to onboard your ICP by yourself. Like I said, you want to understand the entire fulfillment cycle. And this kind of plays into step 6, where you learn how to onboard your ICP by yourself, because now if you go throughout the entire fulfillment cycle by yourself with that one client, you know exactly how to do the operations, how they should be done, and what quality control looks like. Because and I'll go into this in a couple of steps as to why this is super important, but you basically want to do this by yourself because you want to learn what built your company. If you can understand the foundations of your company and what a fulfillment process looks like, this also applies to sales. If you can go through a sales process completely by yourself so that you know what that looks like, right? Simply understanding the foundations of your agency And going through a lot of things by yourself before hiring anyone or taking anyone through it simply makes it just ensures the highest level of quality, right? So before you begin to hire anyone, learn how to onboard your clients by yourself until you've gotten to the point where your time has just been taken completely. And now you don't have any time, that you just have to hire someone, right? So learn how to do this completely by yourself so that you understand what real quality looks like in terms of a fulfillment process. So that now, when you begin to hire others, you can give them clear instruction as to what perfect looks like. And this will help you create an SOP for your future hires or current hires, right? Then step 7, set up onboarding forms and automations and an FAQ chatbot so you only do 10% of the fulfillment work. Now, at some point, obviously, going through the entire onboarding process and onboarding your client and doing all the work manually by yourself is going to be super useful, because this will also allow you to identify specifically what you can automate. So you can set up onboarding forms to do 90% of the work for you, automations to do 90% of the work for you, and I will give you my spin on an FAQ chatbot. But essentially, right, go through the entire onboarding process by yourself, and then from there, set up all of the automations in the areas that can be automated so that you can only do a fraction of what you were doing before manually, okay? And that's just going to save you time so that you can focus on sales, marketing, and other parts of the business when those times come, okay? And my spin on the FAQ chatbot is this. So obviously you have a Slack or maybe whatever your communications channel is with your client, but your client will have moments where they need to reach out to you and they have a question about something, or maybe they wanted to ask something, right? And you're not able to respond to them straight away. So what I like to do is I like to create an FAQ chatbot, basically with every single answer preloaded into it, so that anytime a client has a question, the FAQ chatbot can be the front end kind of like 24/7 support that can answer their question, right? So if they say like, oh, like, by the way, like, what kind of results should I see with this in like 30 days? And if you already have a preloaded answer for that, your AI chatbot will answer that for you. So you don't have to actually manually send a text back to your clients and take the time to do that by yourself. So now you have like a 24/7 support chatbot in place that will answer all of your clients' questions, concerns, and so on, right? And again, this goes back to you saving as much time as possible and leveraging automation, forms, and chatbots to make sure that you can focus on other parts of the business and really reach true scale. Now, the final step of fulfillment is obviously hire VAs, CSMs for specific roles. Now, here's one thing you have to understand. There's 2 ways that you can go about hiring a VA or a CSM for the fulfillment in the back end. You can hire someone that's really expensive and that's going to cost you a monthly retainer to do everything for you, basically like being a CSM that controls all of these different factors. Or you can hire in a different way where you hire multiple VAs and like multiple CSMs, but they all do much smaller and very specific tasks. So one thing that we did at the agency is we didn't hire one person to take over the entire thing. We hired people, one person for systems, one person for onboarding calls, one person for 24/7 client communications. We obviously had a chatbot at the time as well, but we had a person like a VA there just in case. So we hired people across all these like much smaller roles because it's much easier for them to understand and really get good at one specific thing. Because if it's just harder to find A players nowadays, and I know a lot of agency owners struggle with this. I know exactly what you're feeling, and you can find these A players. We found A players through Upwork and Fiverr. Don't get me wrong, but there are going to be times when even A players, they need training and they aren't good yet. So what you want to do is just make sure that you hire a bunch of people, but make sure that all of these people do very small but very different things, so that they get good at that one thing. They get so damn good at it that at some point, they can either just be the the head of systems, and then maybe they can transition into learning something else and starting from scratch, or you can just maintain maybe like a team of 5 on the back end, maybe a team of 3, and they all have different tasks. And it's just easier for everyone at the end of the day, and it's cheaper. Now you don't have to pay someone a large monthly retainer to do like this large fulfillment CSM process, controlling everything on the back end and hoping that your clients don't churn, right? So what I'd recommend instead is hire, many VAs or a certain amount of VAs for a bunch of small tasks where you can pay them $5 an hour, which is doable, right? And then from there, that way you can cut down costs. You don't have to pay someone a fat retainer on the back end, and you can maintain more quality because now a lot of people can focus on much smaller tasks that are more simple and they can get really, really good at it. Whereas someone, just hiring one person who controls the entire thing, it's going to take them much longer to get good and learn everything the way that you built it, right? So that's my approach. But now, overall, we've covered all of these different systems, right? We've covered marketing, sales, fulfillment, and all of these different pillars and all of these different steps. And hopefully by now, you can understand everything that you need to scale your agency. And this I'm giving you from experience. This is my experience. This is exactly the steps that I took to scale my agency and systemize it and automate it so that we can reach 50K a month with high profit margins, and I can still travel the world and have time to do so. Because there's two lives that you can live as an agency owner. You can live the life of an agency owner who is struggling for time, you're a glorified employee, and you work 24/7 basically. Or you can live the life of an agency owner who makes more profit, who has more time, works on the business, not in it, and has automated systems in place to make sure that 90% of your processes are done, whether it's an automated system through high level or just an automated system, not an automated, but a delegated system through VAs. You choose the life that you want to live. I think for me, it was very clear that I wanted to live the life of someone who can run an agency, run a business, work hard, but at the same time also rest whenever I want, travel whenever I want, and do anything that I want at any time, while still running a business in place that works on its own. And that needs me in place, obviously, and still certain operations, but I had a much more free life, And then one thing that I just wanted to mention is after going through all of these steps, and if you've gotten through all of these steps already, like props to you, that's like you should give yourself a pat on the back. But if you're still going through these steps and you should still implement this in place, I want you to understand that this entire process is like, the way that I frame it is, you have to basically become the person that is worthy of completing these steps, and you become a person with more skills. And at some point, once you have like an acquisition team in place, a sales team in place, a fulfillment team in place, you begin to not just become an agency owner, but you kind of become a bit of a manager, because now you're managing all of these people within this agency that's making money, and it actually has legs. It's making recurring revenue, and you guys are doing well and you're growing, right? And then you begin to transition from like someone that was really in the operations and day-to-day side of things and the product based, and you were doing everything, to someone that's more of a visionary and someone that is data driven, someone that looks at at people, someone that is more focused on now helping the people grow and get better at those specific tasks that you hired them for, rather than being the person within your agency that does everything again, right? And that's where you need to make the transition into becoming a person with more skills. And that's why I use this stickman to kind of like bodybuilder stickman analogy, because now you become this person who like has more skills. You're patient, you're accountable, you're data driven, you're a visionary, and that's kind of the role that you transition into as a part of growing your agency and completing all of these different steps. Now, this is not going to happen overnight. You have to understand this. This is going to take some time, but once you start getting to these final steps of all of these different pillars, this is the person you're going to begin to transition into, and you should expect this to happen, because like that, it's just like the coming of age type of thing, it's like this like you enter into a new era from another, and in that era you're sort of required to do different things. Now it's just about managing people, and making sure that you can manage the data, solve for bottlenecks, and kind of instruct others within your agency to do better and teach them and train them. And then at some point, even hire coaches to train them, to take over most of the day-to-day operations for you guys, for you as an agency owner. So, like I said, I hope this was a valuable guide for you as an agency owner, to give you everything that you basically need to scale your agency to 50K a month and above with high profit margins. This is the way that I did it. These are the steps that I took with my team, and this is how we scaled to 50K a month and above. I hope you found this video valuable. If you have any questions, do let me know. But I did just want to say one more thing. I happen to work with agency owners, some agency owners, not all, on the back end, in terms of one of my offers as a part of my company, and I help them scale their business and help them throughout, these steps, and help them really kind of achieve these steps one by one, maintaining the quality while also making sure that you guys can get clients for your agency, and you take all the right steps in order to scale. So if you need help with acquisition, if you need help with sales, if you need help with fulfillment, and you need help with just scaling your agency overall, then what I'm going to do is there's going to be a link in the description of this video that you guys can click on and schedule a call with me. It's no pressure. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if you want to scale your agency past 50K a month and you want someone that's done it in an industry that was B2B and that's like considered one of the harder industries, then you let me know, and I look forward to speaking with you. So schedule a call with me if you want. But regardless, I hope you got a lot of value from this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.